listening to the Art of Homeschooling podcast, where we help parents cultivate creativity and connection at home. I'm your host, Jean Miller, and here on this podcast, you'll find stories and inspiration to bring you the confidence you need to make homeschooling work for your family. Let's begin. Well, hey there, my friend, and welcome to this episode of the Art of Homeschooling podcast. And today we're going to talk about how homeschooling is unique for each one of us. So I think as homeschoolers, our days can sometimes feel sort of random or scattered, but with time, most homeschoolers find their groove. And because we all have this unique energy, this unique flow, we begin to learn what works, right? What works best for us and for our kids. And this is what we call our homeschooling rhythm. And each rhythm is unique, just like each family is unique. So today on the podcast, I have a very special guest, homeschooling mom, Sarah Etheridge. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Jean. How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to have you here. So in this episode, Sarah and I are going to really dig into how unique each family's homeschool rhythm can be. We have some great examples for you, and talk about how it can shift, right, from season to season, from year to year, while still providing that sense of security for your kids. So first, a quick introduction to Sarah, and then we will get into the conversation. So Sarah has 4 kiddos, ages 27 to 7. This year, she is homeschooling grades 1 and 7. She lives in a rural Ohio village with a big garden, flock of chickens, lots of pets, and plenty of mud.
Especially in the spring.
Especially in the spring. I'm in Ohio too, and we often call this mud season here. Yeah. All right. So Sarah recently chatted with 2 other homeschooling mamas about their daily rhythms. So I encourage you to check out the show notes for this episode. It's really a companion article called Holistic Homeschooling, A Day in the Life. And today, Sarah and I are going to talk about how we manage to find that rhythm for our families. And you can go have a read. There's even more beautiful examples over in the show notes at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 29. So Sarah, let's start off with your experience homeschooling. So when did you start homeschooling? I don't even remember.
Sure. Yeah. One thing I'll mention is that there are a lot of 7s in that biography of mine, and my oldest is 23, not 27. So
sorry.
He is not that old yet. That would be crazy. That's okay.
That was my mistake.
So when this now 23-year-old was in 2nd grade, he was in public school, and he was having a hard time, especially with learning to read. And they were pulling him out and doing reading intervention, and he was starting to act out in class and get really frustrated and goofy. And, they were starting to look at other interventions. And I just decided that it was time to do something new. So we pulled him out in the middle of the year. And just decided let's homeschool. Let's see what happens.
Wow. And here you are, how many years later, right? Still with 2 homeschooling. So isn't that amazing? So where in the journey did you first learn about the Waldorf approach?
Yeah. So, um, when the kids were younger, my husband and I were working and teaching at an organic farm. And so we were really like immersed in the whole holistic lifestyle culture. And at the same time, I was teaching preschool at a Montessori school. So similar to what you did.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And just uh through that, I knew I wanted to do something more hands-on for
Mhm.
him. It turned out he had a very small vision issue, which was a developmental vision issue called convergence insufficiency. And so we needed to just be really hands-on for a while until his eyes caught up with his development. And so I was implementing a lot of Montessori things and making the materials at home,
My-
making all those little bead bars and the painted rods and the cards, printing all the cards. And when
Wow.
I started reading about Waldorf and realizing that I could show up for a lesson with a story and a box of crayons and paper and not need anything more elaborate, I realized that that's the way I wanted to go.
Oh my gosh. That is such a great story. I'd never heard the whole thing. And yes, I mean, we have so many overlaps, right, in our journeys. But for a while, my husband Brian and I, we sold Montessori materials for an individual who made them, by hand. And so we traveled around selling these gorgeous, handmade, often wooden, like the sorting
Mhm.
trays and all kinds of
Mhm.
beautiful materials. And I worked in a Montessori 3 to 6 classroom myself
Mhm.
too. And I
Mhm.
always thought, like, what an amazing thing it would be to just give the children some of these materials and see what they do with them, right? Like allow them to
Mhm.
play with them
Mhm.
than is often invited in a Montessori classroom.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they are beautiful materials, and it was also my introduction to hands-on, like really hands-on learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I what was really neat is that the co-teacher I was working with, it was not a certified Montessori program. It was a parenting co-op. And she was this amazing soul from Ireland. And she brought this magic to the classroom and taught me so much just about how to look at children and respect them and talk to them and
Mm.
interact. And it was just so heartwarming to be in her presence. She was a great mentor when my kids were young.
Oh, what a beautiful story. That's really lovely. So the materials, yes. And then that idea of a story, paper and crayons.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's a beautiful image to think about a starting point
Mm-hmm.
with the Waldorf approach and just that idea of keeping it really simple and seeing where it goes, right? Like that we show up with a starting point of a story. It all starts with stories, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. So Sarah and I then met at a workshop that I organized here in Cleveland, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
yeah? So Barbara Dewey, whom I consider my mentor, I brought her to Cleveland to do a workshop in my living room with a group of homeschoolers. And so it's super fun now because Sarah's oldest and my
Other way
youngest,
around.
right,
Oh
are
yeah, yeah. You're right. You got it.
yeah, are both graduating from college as we record this, like in a
Mm.
week.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to the same school. So that's really been a fun thing. Yeah, so and Sarah is one of my amazing assistants at the Taproot Teacher Training, the summer event that is now about to launch into its 15th annual, right?
Mm. Oh my gosh.
um, yeah, so So that journey, discovering hands-on homeschooling, like so long ago, it really evolves, doesn't it? With each of our
Mm,
kids and their needs. And then as our families grow.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And so this idea of rhythm, of homeschool rhythm, and rhythm can be applied to what our year, like the seasons of the year, the block topics that we often bring each month, like a theme,
Hmm.
and the days of the week, and then of course our daily rhythm, the rhythm of what we do from the time we get up until we our heads hit the pillow at night. So when did you
Hmm.
first start, like, discover that concept of rhythm? Do you remember that, or when you began to work with that idea?
Yeah, well, there were some pretty influential things along the way. But I will say that we've always had a pretty rhythmic parenting style before I could even define it as such.
Mm,
Just, the bookends of our day were stories and our meal times. And
yes.
so, and until my kids are reading independently, um, we start our day with stories, we do stories for lesson, and we end our day with more stories.
Yeah.
So, and it's been that way for the my whole parenting, whole time parenting.
Hmm.
And then I started to discover the songs and the poems that you can weave into your day, like at transition times.
Yeah.
And I loved the songs, and the kids had fun doing it, and the little rhymes would help us get through the day.
Yeah.
Um, so I started to look more closely at that. And then I think it was probably when I read Simplicity Parenting.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing that I took from that was the rhythm of your family meals.
Oh.
So,
Hmm.
like, just planning your week of meals so that every week follows a rhythm. And, that was 10 years ago, maybe.
Hmm.
And still to this day, if you show up at my house on a Thursday, it's breakfast for dinner night. It does not vary.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Our breakfast for dinner is Wednesday nights, and we call it Wacky Wednesday. And,
Okay.
and yeah, it's game changing, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's somehow just the meals takes,
Mhm.
that idea of decision fatigue. It just takes it gives us one less decision that we have to make. And boy, making a decision about what to eat for dinner at 4 p.m., not such
Oh
a
my gosh.
good idea.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So when I first heard this concept, it was actually before I read the book, Simplicity Parenting, and it baffled me. I thought, I, I must not be a very rhythmic person here. I love music, right? And I love the rhythms, like repeated rhythms in a song.
mhm.
But it was very hard for me at first because I very much want to try the next new thing.
Mhm.
So to keep a consistent, steady rhythm was hard. But that idea, it really did help so much. The idea of, to me, reading about meal times, from Kim John Payne in that book, was the idea of meals as anchor points in your day.
Mhm.
Because we do generally eat breakfast at a similar time and lunch and dinner each day. And then to use that as a framework,
Mhm.
then suddenly it felt like I was not responsible for absolutely everything, right?
Mhm.
But just to fill in certain chunks of the day. So, yeah, it's a lot to work with. But listeners, if you're new to rhythm, be sure to have a listen to episode number 3. It's called Relax into Your Homeschooling Rhythm. And I talk about simplifying homeschooling with a daily rhythm. So you can check that out at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 3. So So let's talk about some examples of rhythm and what's your rhythm like these days? How has it changed or evolved through your journey of homeschooling?
Yeah, sure. I think what I found, gosh, we are not super great early morning people.
Mhm.
Um, so every year the start time just seemed to get later and later and later. And so
You're not
um
alone in that.
yeah. And just the past few years, I've finally gotten really comfortable with that, with saying, okay, 10 o'clock is going to be our start time. And I don't try and push it earlier than that.
Oh,
And
so
then
good. Yeah.
we have our 11sies, our big snack. In the middle of the morning so the kids have energy to go past what would be like a normal lunchtime.
Mhm.
So, because we like to get everything we can done before lunch, because
Oh,
once lunchtime hits, we are all just ready to kind of do our own thing.
yes, that was so true in our family too. Yep.
Yeah, so sometimes it's like 1:30 or 2 before we're eating lunch. um but it works, and I'm so glad I finally just kind of let that go, like trying to have a real strict early morning start time. It just didn't, that was too much for us.
And that is just so important for all of us. That's why this idea of each family being unique, we can say that, but it's harder to embrace it, isn't it? When we think we're supposed to do this a certain way. But boy, there is a lot of freedom and a lot more ease when we kind of accept that the energy of our family and
Hmm.
create a rhythm around that, the natural energy, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. um
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so let's just talk about I'm really excited for people to read this article where you really interviewed or talked to other homeschooling moms and about their rhythm. And so what insights do you want to share from writing the article? And I'll just remind everybody, you can find it at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 29. So be sure to check that out.
Sure. So this was just such a great opportunity to really like step back and look at our rhythm, the overview, the big picture of it,
Mm-hmm.
and to write it out. It's always changing. I'm always tweaking little things, but to look at the general flow of it, and then to kind of reflect on, well, why does this work for us? And um yeah, what's unique about it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like I was struggling with one area with my seventh grader, and that was that for our lesson rhythm, I was trying to weave in like skill practice into our main lesson time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, really trying to make it creative and interesting and relate it to our content areas. And she was just bulking at it, where there was so much resistance
Uh-huh.
with that aspect of our lesson rhythm. And at the same time, so we do a math curriculum where I teach one math lesson a week, and then she would work independently to practice the concept for the rest of the week. But what I was finding is that she was working independently and just making so many mistakes. And so I was having to spend so much time correcting her work, and getting her to do the corrections was causing so much frustration. So in sharing the rhythm schedule with the two other mamas that I worked with, just reading through the different ways that they got their days to flow,
Mm.
gave me an idea of just the tiniest little tweak to our rhythm. And the mama that I referred to in the article as traveling boots mama started her day with skill practice and just got it out of the way. She
Right.
sat down with both of her kiddos at the table and did the skill practice. And then they would sit down for their stories and their main lesson time.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried that, and we would just do like half an hour at the table, working through one-on-one, more in like a tutorial setting, working through those tough math worksheets
Yeah.
and the skill work that I needed her to do, not making it frilly or fancy, just getting it done and putting in the time.
Yes.
And it really made the rest of our school year a lot more successful, I think.
That is so great because I think, one of the overarching messages of putting this together, we wanted to create an article for you all, for the listeners, right, and readers, that just gives you a snapshot of these three different unique, like, day in the life of these homeschooling moms, so that you can check out what others have done, but then craft a rhythm that's just right for your family. So you might get ideas just like Sarah did here, or you might find one of them who is similar to you, right? In the way that she has created her daily rhythm.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
so it's
we
just
do need to tweak it for sure.
and that's one of the things that I've really learned kind of the hard way, is that you have to just look for those small tweaks, because if you try and make a big change, there's going to be a lot of resistance.
Yes.
And
Oh my
so
God.
that, yeah. And then,
And some of us tend to, I mean, it depends, of course, on our own like personalities as the leader, as the facilitator in our homeschool. But some of us have a tendency, this was me, right?
Mhm.
To just start over, like scratch the entire rhythm and start over. And then it would take so much effort to overcome that resistance and
Mhm.
try to kind of get back on track, and it would work for a little bit, but then when it didn't work, I'd scratch the whole thing and start over until I finally
Yeah.
learned like small changes are better.
Mhm. Yeah. For me, I would be kind of going along with a simple rhythm. Like maybe for our morning circle time, we would just be doing one verse, one song, and a candle. And then I would start to like compare myself to other people's circle time rhythms, or get like a big burst of inspiration. And I would plan like a big elaborate circle with, hand clapping or bean bags and a movement piece. And then I would come all excited to start this. And they would be like, what? This is not what I expected. And getting the participation was so hard. No matter how fun it was, they were not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gets me to this concept that I finally learned, right? Which is scale back until it works and then add from there, but add gradually,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we really need to layer in something new,
Mm-hmm.
along with, like have 2/3 of it or more be familiar and the usual, the rhythm that they have grown accustomed to and expect, and then add maybe one little new thing at a time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we do get very enthusiastic,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just small tweaks.
Small
But
tweaks. That is
yeah.
really
Yeah.
good. Yep.
So I
So
got
that I say that all the time. When life gets crazy or when something isn't working, scale back until it works and then add from there. So good.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you, as we wrap up here, do you have any additional insights that you want to share from putting this together? From having these wonderful conversations with homeschooling moms, these other homeschooling moms about rhythm. because it isn't something we talk about really all that much. I mean, in detail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just got such great feedback from the other moms who I worked with about just kind of reflecting on and writing out our rhythms more as an exercise than anything. But, they even wrote to me and said, "Thanks for the great assignment. It gave me a chance to reflect and work through some of our struggles." And just appreciation for having a chance to think through how their educational philosophies and their values affect their rhythm throughout the days and the weeks and the years.
Mm-hmm.
So just being in community and sharing those ideas with people who get it.
Yes.
So it was so valuable. And I think, you have done such a great job at building a community like that.
Oh.
And in the article, I talk about the idea of pace setters as, you think about a pace setter as someone who sets the pace in a running race.
Oh, yeah.
But the pace setter, you kind of work together, you work as a team so that you can both achieve a certain goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just felt like this community is very much the same way. And it's different than looking at like Pinterest or looking at other people's rhythm charts on Instagram.
Yes.
When we work together in this community, we really have each other's best interests in mind.
That's so sweet.
And we can help each other to see those small tweaks and to show up every day and really, have the best rhythm that we can.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think it is so helpful. That's what I longed for myself so much as a homeschooler was this sense of community. I thought my kids would go to the local school and I'd be part of that community. And then as a homeschooler, it's so nice to have someone to have these conversations with, right? And to bounce ideas off of and have other women who have, your best interest in mind. And it is a beautiful thing. So anyone who's listening, if you want to check out Homeschool with Waldorf, we'd love to have you. And you can get more information at artofhomeschooling.com/homeschool with Waldorf. This sense of community, it really often, I think it calls us, just these conversations, right? Call us to be our best selves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And, back to the specific concept of rhythm, I just love this article. So it's a day in the life, right? 3 different homeschooling mamas. And it I think will help you, all the listeners here, find your own rhythm and let that flow, and give it a try for a while and know that it's just something that we are always working with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so unique.
And so unique.
So when it fits, when you find what fits for your family.
So true.
Yeah. And one other observation that I had was how my rhythm and our family's rhythm has changed over the years from being, pretty tight to being more relaxed and loose. But throughout the years, it's really helped us develop this family culture that even though our rhythm has changed, that rhythm still holds us.
Yes. Yes. I find that to be so true. Even now, so my kids are, between the ages of 21 and 31. And for us, even now when we gather together, mealtimes are anchor points. And we, everybody has a different way of waking up and being in the morning and all of that. But we definitely have the come together at certain points during the day and then go off at certain times of the day and do our own thing and then come back together. And that is a beautiful family rhythm that does strengthen over time.
Mm-hmm.
The more we work with rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me. This has been a really insightful conversation. And everyone listening, please do go check out the article about a day in the life. And you can find that at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 29. So thanks again, Sarah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jean. We'll
Yep.
talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today, my friend. But here's what I want you to remember. Rather than perfection, let's focus on connection. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Art of Homeschooling podcast.